The Ember Wolves of Oris's Hello. Part 1. A shrouded destination. The transport's engines roared across the star-swept void as Inquisitor Thiesen's Scarrow stood rigid, arms folded. He stared through the tiny viewport at the drifting shape of Fort Vanguard on Oris's Halo. A frontier plan is seldom worthy of the Imperium's attention, yet cryptid astropath messages had drawn him here. Whispers of heresy clung to this wasteland like a blade pressed against an unsuspecting throat. The transport touched down, the ramp groaning open, and a worn-looking lieutenant greeted Scarrow with trembling deference. "Welcome, my lord." Colonel Dirks awaits in the command bunker. Scarrow swept his gaze over the ramp. The few sentries on the walls looked bored and ill-disciplined. Disgust flickered across his face. "Show me the disturbances," he said coldly at once. Part 2 whispers in the dark, illuminated by the bunker's subterranean glow. Colonel Dirks spoke in hushed tones. "Patrols have found bizarre markings on farmsteads, and empty bodies arranged in profane symbols." And the Inquisitor's gloved fingers drummed on the tabletop. "Why did you delay notifying the Ordo Hereticus?" Dirks coughed, sweat beading on his brow. "We tried, my lord." Months passed without reply, until recently the Ember Wolves announced they were en route, and then a lean woman in guardsman fatigue stepped forward. Sergeant Leora Crane. Scars crisscrossed her face, remnants of a Hive City upbringing. "I've scouted the desert routes. I can guide you to the sites." Inquisitor Scarrow regarded her with a cold, meticulous stare. "Gather your squad and prepare a convoy. We will move soon for Part 3. When the wolves arrive, Fort Vanguard's courtyard shook with the roar of engine. A sleek gunship descended under swirling dust, bearing a silver emblem of a wolf's head wreathed in flames. The Ember Wolves emerged, towering giants in ornate power armor. At their head stood Captain Aurelius, Ralph's helmet tucked beneath his arm. "Inquisitor Scarrow," he greeted, his voice echoing in the stillness. "My strike force stands ready to crush this heresy." Scarrow eyed the space marine. "I have leads indicating a cult in the desert canyons. We should depart immediately." Ralph inclined his head. "We will assist under the Emperor's gaze." The subtle tension was clear. The Esters bowed to no one but their chapter and the Emperor, yet both men knew they must stand together or risk letting chaos fester. Part 4. Beyond the frontier, dust-stained chimeras rumbled across the endless June, engines echoing under a merciless sun inside one transport. Inquisitor Scarrow studied a flickering hollow map. "This frontier is too quiet," he mused. "Heresy thrives in forgotten corners." Sergeant Crane nodded, adjusting her grip on a gun. "Locals claim they see torches at dusk chanting in the canyons. Colonel DX dismissed it as superstition until people started vanishing." A burst of static rattled the Vox movement ahead. An unidentified heat signature. Scarrow signaled a halt, sending the servo skull. "We'll confirm outside." Captain Ralph and his Marines disembarked, both weapons at the ready, and they advanced on a rocky pass above them. The servo skull soared, capturing a grainy feed of robed shapes, gathered around sinister bone effigies, chaos worshippers, and Scarrow's purge. Demol, Part 5. A colony of bones, hidden among canyon walls, A ragged horde of cultists chanted around monstrous totems of bone, their leader draped in crimson. Rags brandished a twisted staff. Warped energies crackled in the hot desert air. "Brother," Sergeant Simeon barked. "Halt, heretics! Surrender or be destroyed." The robed figure hissed and raised his staff. Psychic energy surged in a violent wave. Some guardsmen staggered, others gripped their weapons tighter, and fire roared. Captain Ruth Bolter's shells thundered, tearing through cultist ranks in clouds of blood and dust. Yet the heretics charged with maddened fervor, swinging crude blades of bone and rusted steel. Sergeant Crane downed one cultist with a point-blank last shot. As another lunged at her, she smashed her rifle but into his jaw, finishing him with a bolt of searing energy. The pyre at the rear shrieked. "A final incantation," Brother Sergeant Simeon answered with a cracked grenade. The explosion flung the warp-wielding heretic to the ground. Inquisitor Scarrow rushed forward, pinning the peer under his boot. "Who taught you these rites?" he demanded. "What do you plan?" Blood bubbled from the cultist's lips, yet he grinned. The breach is near, and then he slumped in death, leaving only ominous silence. Part 6. Salt and Shadow. With the cultists' corpses burned and fallen guardsmen mourned, the convoy pressed deeper into the desert. The midday sun hammered down, reflecting off the salt flats like broken glass. Brother Medic had tended the wounded, anointing them with sacred balms. Despite fatigue and fear, none dared waver. The stench of heresy spurred them onward at last. They reached an outcropping of rocky spires. The caverns of Oris's echo yawned open, ringed by bone totems, bedecked with crimson glyphs. Sergeant Crane swallowed hard, feeling like something's watching us. Captain Ralph observed the runes etched into the stone. "We proceed with caution. The warp taint is thick here." Part 7. Into the more glow. Globes lit the winding passage. Each echoing step magnified the eerie hush. Dripping water and shifting shadows played tricks on the eyes. They found a ritual chamber adorned with black candles and bone altars. Tattered parchments, scrolled with profane script, lay scattered. Scarrow's lip curled in disgust. "Summoning rite," he whispered. "They've started the final steps." Brother Sergeant Simeon peered down a side passage. "They're luring us deeper, pressing on the caverns twisted like a labyrinth." Psi tunnels were deliberately collapsed to force a single route. At last, the passage opened into a vast subterranean hall. Stalagmites and jagged rocks formed a ring around a stone. There, a group of chanting cultists surrounded a half-constructed archway etched with pulsating runes. Reality itself seemed to shimmer in that arch, purple light dancing like living smoke. Part 8. Battle of the Inner Sanctum. Captain Rolfe raised his bolter fire. The EMP wolves unleashed a barrage, cutting down robed fanatics and their leaders. Panel warp, power deflecting some shots. The swirling portal flared an unholy wind roaring through the chamber. A towering demon emerged half-formed from the rift, its molten crimson skin, steamed eyes burning with malevolence. It roared, shaking the cavern. Guardsmen quailed. Still, the Estories charged, chanting the Emperor's name. Brother Medicar, confronting the beast, purity seal in hand, recited litanies, defying the demons, warp fire. Captain Ralph carved into its flank with his chain sword. Demonic ichor sprayed sizzling as it struck the ceramite plate. Meanwhile, Inquisitor Scarrow dueled a robed cult leader near the dais. Psychic blasts battered him backward, but Sergeant Crane intervened with a burst of fire. Seizing the moment, Scarrow lobbed a grenade. The null field severed the heretic's warp connection, killing him instantly. "Ralph destroyed the arch," Scarrow shouted. Ralph nodded. Bolter fire and melter blast shattered the ancient stone. The portal collapsed in a thunderous implosion, dragging fragments of reality into the void. The demon, cut off from its source, shrieked in agony. Brother Sergeant Simeon fired a melter shot point blank into the beast's skull with a final tortured roar. It disintegrated, leaving only a smear of ash. The cavern fell, silent. Foul energies dissipated, extinguishing black candles, and the last of the cultists lay dead or delirious, their ritual undone. Part 9. The Aftermath. Victorious but bloodied, the Imperial forces collapsed the tunnels to prevent future heresy. Brother Medigates tended the wounded, and the guardsmen gathered our discarded texts for incineration back at Fort Vanguard. Colonel Dox and the garrison saluted the returning convoy with a hush of reverence for the fallen on the fortress walls. Inquisitor Scarrow gazed out over the desert as dawn light washed the sands. Captain Ralph joined him, removing his helmet. "We leave tomorrow. Another warp disturbance stirs in a neighboring system." Scarrow nodded. "I'll remain there." Maybe there are other cult cells on Oris's halo for a moment. They shared a quiet respect to impervious blades forged in the Emperor's name. Then Ralph departed, his task unending. The Inquisitor lingered, wind stirring the dust. Today the breach was sealed, but in the grim darkness of the 41st Millennium, vigilance was eternal. The Space Wolves had fought alongside the Ordo Hereticus and won. Yet somewhere beyond the horizon, another storm brewed. In war, there is no final victory, only the next battle.